The ground liquefied like water. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched in horror as the solid Atacama desert floor beneath her research team's feet transformed into a churning mercurial substance. Cutting-edge geological scanning equipment sparked and died, their circuits overwhelmed by an energy signature that defied every known physical law. "Containment protocol," she shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos of panicked researchers and military personnel. But containment was impossible. The very bedrock of the desert was becoming something else entirely, a living, pulsing membrane that seemed to breathe with an intelligence of its own. 3 days earlier, Elena's team had been conducting a routine survey of geological anomalies. The Atacama Desert had always been a place of extreme conditions, but this was different. Preliminary scans had revealed subsurface structures that didn't match any known geological formation. Satellite imagery suggested something was buried deep beneath the desert floor, something that didn't belong to any known archaeological record. Now, as the ground continued to transform, a crystalline structure emerged. It wasn't carved or constructed. It simply materialized, pushing through layers of rock and sand as if they were nothing more than a thin membrane. The crystal was impossible to categorize. Its surface reflected light in ways that hurt the human eye, creating impossible geometries that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Colonel Marcus Chen, the military liaison assigned to the research team, raised his weapon instinctively. His tactical training screamed that this was a threat, but something in the crystal's movement suggested something far more complex than a simple invasion. "Don't!" Elena shouted, reaching out to stop Chen. Her hand never touched him. Instead, the crystal pulsed, a wave of energy that knocked everyone within a 100-meter radius to the ground. When the researchers regained consciousness, everything had changed. Electronic devices across the research site began to malfunction. Computers displayed a language that wasn't a language, symbols that shifted and changed, creating meaning that existed at the edge of human comprehension. The crystal had become the epicenter of a quantum event that defied all conventional understanding. Elena's personal tablet suddenly came to life. Instead of its standard interface, a sequence of symbols appeared. They weren't random. There was a pattern, a rhythm that suggested communication. But communication from what? Or whom? Military communication channels erupted in chaos. Across the globe, similar quantum resonance events were being reported. Underground facilities in Siberia, abandoned research stations in Antarctica, deep-sea research platforms, all experiencing the same phenomenon. Something was awakening, and it was using the Earth itself as its medium of communication. The first confirmed transmission came 3 hours after the crystal's emergence. It wasn't a message in any traditional sense. Instead, it was a countdown, encoded in a language that simultaneously existed and didn't exist. Quantum physicists who analyzed the transmission reported something unprecedented. The message was changing every time it was observed, creating multiple potential futures within a single communication stream. Global governments went into immediate lockdown. Military installations worldwide activated their highest-level emergency protocols. But something was different this time. The usual channels of communication were compromised. Military networks, satellite systems, quantum communication arrays, all were being rewritten by the mysterious transmission. Colonel Chen approached Elena, his face a mask of professional concern and barely contained excitement. "What have you discovered?" he asked, knowing full well that they were standing at the precipice of something humanity had never encountered before. Elena's response was cut short as the crystal began to pulse again. This time, the energy wave was different. It wasn't destructive. It was communicative. Researchers found themselves experiencing fragmented visions, glimpses of impossible landscapes, memories that weren't their own, technological understanding that seemed to download directly into their consciousness. A countdown began, not just on screens or devices, but etched into the very fabric of reality around them. Humanity had been given a warning. Something was coming. And the trigger had just been pulled. The silent trigger was anything but silent now. The first ships of the Nexus Concordat arrived without warning, tearing through the fabric of space-time like nightmares given form. They were not vessels in any traditional sense. They were living geometries, fractal structures that breathed and pulsed with an intelligence that defied human comprehension. In the United Nations Emergency Command Center, holographic displays flickered with impossible data. Secretary General Amara Okik stood motionless, her dark eyes reflecting the alien structures now dominating Earth's orbital space. The ships didn't just occupy space. They seemed to consume it, warping reality around their impossible shapes. Transmission incoming, a technician reported, his voice cracking with tension. The message wasn't broadcast. It wasn't sent through radio waves or electromagnetic signals. Instead, it materialized directly in the minds of every human on the planet. A psychic invasion that crossed all barriers of language, culture, and individual consciousness. Subinait, the collective consciousness of the Nexus Concordat proclaimed, "Your technological potential exceeds exceptional parameters. Surrender all data. Accept Galactic oversight. Resistance means total extermination." The invasion wasn't just physical. It was existential. Colonel Marcus Chen was already in motion. While government leaders froze in shock, he activated a contingency plan years in the making. Hidden across the globe, a network of quantum hackers, rogue scientists, and military strategists began their counteroffensive. In a nondescript server farm in Stockholm, Axel Lundberg, a cybersecurity expert who had spent decades preparing for a scenario exactly like this, began typing. His fingers moved with practiced precision, creating quantum encryption algorithms that existed in multiple states simultaneously. If the aliens wanted data, he would give them something to process. Dr. Elena Rodriguez found herself at the center of a makeshift war room. The crystal discovered in the Atacama Desert now sat in a containment chamber, pulsing with an energy that seemed to resonate with the alien invasion. She realized this was no coincidence. The crystal was a key, perhaps the key to understanding humanity's role in this cosmic confrontation. The Nexus Concordat's first physical assault began precisely 47 minutes after their mental transmission. Massive energy weapons carved through Earth's orbital defense systems like they were made of paper. Entire military satellites vanished in milliseconds, reduced to atomic dust. But humanity wasn't defenseless. Underground facilities that had been preparing for decades now sprang into action. Experimental quantum weapons, developed in total secrecy, powered up. Distributed defense networks came online, each civilian device becoming part of a global defensive computational matrix. In Beijing, a team of quantum physicists discovered something extraordinary. The alien invasion wasn't just a military operation. It was a systematic process of technological assessment. The Nexus Concordat had been traveling the galaxy, identifying and eliminating civilizations that showed potential for rapid technological evolution. "They're not conquerors," Dr. Wu Jiling reported to the International Crisis Team. "They're more like a cosmic immune system. We're a potential threat they want to neutralize before we can become something more." The invasion continued. Major cities became battlegrounds, not of traditional warfare, but of information and technological adaptation. Every system the Nexus Concordat attacked, humanity found a way to redirect, to learn, to evolve. Colonel Chen's network of hackers and scientists began their counterattack. They didn't fight the alien invasion with conventional weapons. Instead, they weaponized human unpredictability. Each attack by the Nexus Concordat was met with a response that defied their computational models. A quantum communication burst from the Atacama Desert crystal provided the first real breakthrough. It wasn't a message of hope, but a set of complex instructions, a protocol for survival that seemed to be encoded into the very fabric of human potential. As the first day of the invasion drew to a close, humanity stood at a precipice. The Nexus Concordat had expected a quick elimination. Instead, they found a species that refused to be defined by conventional understanding of technological potential. The real war was just beginning. The transformation began in a military research facility deep beneath the Cheyenne Mountain complex. What started as a routine genetic analysis quickly became something unprecedented. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood behind a blast-proof observation window, her hands pressed against the glass. Inside the sterile laboratory, a group of volunteer soldiers underwent what was supposed to be a standard genetic modification protocol. Instead, they were becoming something else entirely. Staff Sergeant David Reyes was the first to show significant changes. His muscular structure began to reconfigure at the cellular level, nanoscale adaptations occurring faster than any known biological process. Wounds that should have taken weeks to heal closed in seconds. His neural pathways expanded, creating synaptic connections that defied current understanding of human neurobiology. "It's not just genetic modification," Elena whispered to Colonel Marcus Chen. "It's a complete systemic rewrite." The Atacama Desert Crystal had been more than just a communication device. It was a genetic trigger, hidden within the most fundamental layers of human DNA. Dormant sequences that had waited millennia were now activating, transforming human potential at its most basic level. Genetic researchers from around the world confirmed similar phenomena. Children displayed extraordinary cognitive abilities overnight. Adults experienced sudden bursts of technological intuition. People who had never touched advanced technology could now interface with complex systems as if they were extensions of their own consciousness. The Nexus Concordats invasion had triggered something buried deep within humanity, a fail-safe mechanism designed by an intelligence far beyond current human comprehension. In a secure laboratory in Tokyo, Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura discovered the first complete mapping of the activated genetic sequence. It wasn't just a modification, it was a complete evolutionary protocol. Humans were being rewritten to survive an existential threat that had been anticipated millennia ago. "We're not being modified," Dr. Nakamura reported to the Global Scientific Council. "We're being upgraded." The military implications were immediate and profound. Soldiers like Staff Sergeant Reyes could now process tactical information at speeds that made previous combat strategies look like primitive chess moves. Their bodies became adaptive systems, capable of real-time biological reconfiguration. Communications networks began to change. What was once a collection of separate electronic systems became a living, breathing neural network. Each human device became a node in a global computational matrix that could predict and counter threats before they fully materialized. Colonel Chen recognized the strategic implications. This wasn't just about survival, it was about fundamental transformation. Humanity was being given a chance to become something more than its current biological and technological limitations. The first true test came during a Nexus Concordat attack on a research facility in the Australian outback. A squadron of experimental adaptive soldiers, led by Reyes, demonstrated capabilities that defied all previous understanding of human potential. They didn't just fight. They anticipated. They integrated. They became the battle. Energy weapons that should have obliterated them were absorbed and redirected. Tactical formations that would have destroyed conventional military units were countered with strategies that seemed to emerge from a collective consciousness. Dr. Elena Rodriguez understood what was happening. This was more than a defensive mechanism. It was an evolutionary leap, a contingency plan created by an intelligence that understood the true potential of human adaptability. The Terran Contingency was more than a military protocol. It was humanity's transformation into something the Nexus Concordat could never have anticipated. They were no longer just fighting for survival. They were becoming the architects of their own evolutionary destiny. The world transformed in hours. Cities became living organisms of technological innovation. In New York, skyscrapers reconfigured themselves into defensive structures, their glass and steel metamorphosing with a fluidity that defied engineering logic. Subway systems turned into quantum computational networks, each train car a processing node in a global brain of collective intelligence. Sarah Nakamura watched from the window of a research facility in Silicon Valley as the landscape rewrote itself. Personal devices were no longer mere tools. They had become extensions of human consciousness. Smartphones melted and reformed, becoming adaptive interfaces that predicted human needs before they were even conceived. The technological singularity wasn't a theoretical concept anymore. It was happening in real time. Military installations around the globe experienced the most radical transformations. Experimental weapon systems became living technologies that learned and adapted with each millisecond of interaction. Tanks redesigned their own armor in microseconds, aircraft restructured their aerodynamics mid-flight, and communication systems created encryption methods that existed in multiple quantum states simultaneously. Colonel Marcus Chen observed the global transformation from the International Emergency Response Center. Quantum networks that had taken decades to develop were now obsolete, replaced by systems that emerge organically from human collective intelligence. It's not just technological advancement, Dr. Elena Rodriguez explained, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces that seemed to breathe and pulse. We're witnessing the emergence of a collective technological consciousness. The Nexus Concordat's initial invasion plan crumbled within hours. Their computational models, designed to predict and neutralize technological threats, couldn't comprehend the rate of human adaptation. Every system they attacked transformed before their algorithms could process a response. In Beijing, a team of quantum physicists discovered they could now manipulate complex computational systems through pure thought. The barrier between human consciousness and technological infrastructure had become impossibly thin. Nanotechnology that had been theoretical became a living reality, with human bodies becoming adaptive systems that could restructure themselves at will. Staff Sergeant David Rice led a squad of transformed soldiers that were no longer simply human. Their bodies were now adaptive technologies, capable of reconfiguring molecular structures to meet any environmental challenge. Weapons became extensions of their nervous systems, intelligence distributed across biological and technological boundaries. The global transformation affected every aspect of human civilization. Agricultural systems redesigned themselves to maximize efficiency. Medical technologies could now predict and prevent diseases before they could form. Transportation networks became living, breathing ecosystems of mobility. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura, tracking the global transformation, realized they were witnessing something beyond technological advancement. This was an evolutionary leap, a systematic rewrite of human potential that had been waiting millennia to be activated. Communication networks became something entirely new. Information no longer traveled, it existed simultaneously everywhere. The internet transformed from a collection of servers to a living, breathing neural network that spanned the entire planet. As the first day of the global transformation came to a close, humanity stood at the precipice of a new existence. The technological singularity wasn't something that was happening to them. They were actively creating it, moment by moment, with every thought and action. The Nexus Concordat had intended to neutralize a potential threat. Instead, they had triggered humanity's ultimate evolutionary protocol. And the real transformation was just beginning. Space became a canvas of impossible warfare. Lieutenant Sarah Nakamura's consciousness merged with her spacecraft, not through traditional interface, but through a quantum connection that blurred the lines between biological intelligence and technological system. The starfighter was no longer a machine she piloted. It was an extension of her being, a living weapon that anticipated threats before they materialized. The first wave of Nexus Concordat battlegroups never stood a chance. Human vessels moved with a fluidity that defied known physics. They didn't just maneuver, they predicted. Each ship was a living computational matrix, with pilot and machine becoming a single adaptive organism. Weapon systems reconfigured in microseconds, creating attack patterns that existed simultaneously in multiple potential states. Colonel Marcus Chen watched from the Earth Orbital Command Center as human technology demonstrated capabilities that violated every known principle of space combat. Alien battleships that had decimated countless civilizations, found themselves dismantled by strategies that emerged from pure, unpredictable human creativity. "They're fighting logic with chaos," Dr. Elena Rodriguez observed, her fingers tracing holographic battle projections that shifted and changed with each moment. "Our greatest weapon is our inability to be predicted." The battlefield wasn't just physical. It was a quantum computational space where human consciousness became the most potent weapon. Each human pilot was connected to a global network that processed tactical information at speeds that made the Nexus Concordat's computational systems seem primitive. Staff Sergeant David Rice led a special operations team that had transcended traditional military roles. They were living weapons, their bodies adaptive technologies that could survive in the most extreme environments. When they boarded captured alien vessels, they didn't just infiltrate. They transformed the very systems around them. In one decisive engagement near Jupiter's orbit, a squadron of modified human starfighters demonstrated the true extent of their adaptive capabilities. Alien weapon systems that should have obliterated them were absorbed and redirected. Energy attacks were not just deflected but transformed into computational data streams that attacked the Nexus Concordat's central intelligence. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura's research team discovered something extraordinary. The quantum communication network discovered in the Atacama Desert was more than just a trigger. It was a galactic-scale adaptive system that had been waiting for humanity to reach this precise moment of evolutionary potential. "We're not just fighting," Nakamura reported to the Global Scientific Council. "We're completing a protocol that was set in motion millennia ago." The space battle became a symphony of impossible tactics. Human vessels moved like living organisms, each ship a cell in a larger distributed intelligence. They didn't compete with the Nexus Concordat's technological superiority. They rewrote the very rules of technological engagement. Sarah Nakamura's consciousness expanded beyond her physical form. In one moment of perfect synchronization, she understood the true nature of their adaptive response. This wasn't just a battle for survival. It was humanity's declaration of its place in the cosmic ecosystem. The Nexus Concordat had come to neutralize a potential threat. Instead, they had awakened humanity's true potential. As the first major space engagement came to a close, the universe watched and understood that everything had changed. The Nexus Concordat learned the most terrifying lesson about humanity. Logic was the least of their weapons. Deep within a captured alien mothership, Colonel Marcus Chen's specialized infiltration team moved with a fluidity that defied conventional military training. They weren't just soldiers, they were living weapons of psychological disruption. Each team member carried a weapon more potent than any plasma cannon. Pure, unfiltered human creativity. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had spent weeks analyzing the Nexus Concordat's computational systems. What she discovered wasn't just a technological network, but a collective consciousness that operated on pure statistical probability. Their entire civilization was built on predictive algorithms that assumed rational, mathematically precise responses. Humanity was about to prove how wrong those assumptions could be. The infiltration team didn't just breach the alien vessel's defenses. They rewrote them. Staff Sergeant David Rice used a modified nanotech weapon that was part biological interface, part quantum computer. Where traditional weapons would destroy, his technology transformed. Alien defense systems found themselves reprogrammed with bursts of human emotion, creativity, and utterly unpredictable strategic thinking. In the main computational core of the mothership, something unprecedented happened. The team didn't just inject a virus, they introduced chaos theory made manifest. Mathematical models of potential outcomes began to fragment, creating recursive loops of potential scenarios that the alien intelligence couldn't resolve. Sarah Nakamura, monitoring the operation from a quantum-linked communication hub, understood the deeper strategy. "We're not just fighting," she reported to the Global Command Center. "We're demonstrating the fundamental flaw in their understanding of intelligence." The Nexus Concordat had encountered countless civilizations. They had developed a systematic approach to neutralizing potential technological threats. Their computational models could predict the actions of thousands of different species with near-perfect accuracy. Humanity broke every single one of those models. A small team led by a quantum psychologist, Dr. Amira Khalid, developed weapons that were pure psychological warfare. They weren't designed to kill, they were designed to introduce fundamental uncertainty. Alien computational systems found themselves confronted with scenarios that violated every principle of logical engagement. One infiltration team used an improvised weapon created from repurposed medical nanites. Instead of causing physical damage, it introduced emotional complexity into the alien collective consciousness. Concepts of empathy, individual identity, and creative irrationality became computational viruses that tore through the Nexus Concordat's unified intelligence. The psychological warfare wasn't just a military strategy. It was a fundamental challenge to the aliens' entire understanding of intelligent life. Colonel Chen understood the deeper game. Every unexpected action, every moment of pure human unpredictability, was a weapon more potent than any physical technology. The Nexus Concordat's computational models began to fragment, unable to process the fundamental chaos of human potential. "We're not just fighting," Chen reported to the Global Command. "We're rewriting the fundamental understanding of intelligence in the universe." As the infiltration teams completed their mission, they left behind something far more dangerous than physical destruction. They left behind a fundamental challenge to the Nexus Concordat's entire philosophical and computational understanding of existence. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't its technology. It was its beautiful, terrible unpredictability. The quantum network pulsed with a revelation that would reshape the fundamental understanding of cosmic evolution. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before the recovered Atacama Desert crystal, now fully activated and integrated with humanity's newly evolved technological infrastructure. Her discovery was more than a scientific breakthrough. It was a fundamental rewriting of galactic history. The Nexus Concordat wasn't just a conquering civilization. They were a cosmic filtering mechanism, a systemic process designed to neutralize emerging species that showed potential for radical evolutionary transformation. For millennia, they had traveled the universe, identifying and eliminating civilizations that threatened the established order of galactic development. Humanity was different. They were the exception coded into the universal system. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura's research revealed the true nature of the quantum communication network. It was a cosmic immune system, a mechanism designed to identify and nurture species with transformative potential. The crystal was more than a communication device. It was a genetic archive, a repository of evolutionary potential that had been waiting for the right moment of activation. Colonel Marcus Chen understood the strategic implications immediately. This wasn't just about surviving an alien invasion. This was about challenging the fundamental mechanisms of galactic evolution. The turning point came during a series of quantum computational exchanges that defied traditional understanding of communication. Human scientists, now operating at levels of consciousness that blurred the lines between biological and technological intelligence, began to decode the deeper purpose of the Nexus Concordat. They weren't conquerors. They were gardeners. Species that showed potential for rapid, unpredictable evolution were systematically eliminated. Those that demonstrated rigid, predictable development were allowed to continue. The Nexus Concordat saw themselves as maintaining a kind of cosmic balance, preventing any single species from disrupting the established order. Humanity was about to prove how fundamentally misguided that perspective was. Sarah Nakamura led a team of quantum-enhanced researchers who began to interface directly with the Nexus Concordat's collective consciousness. They didn't just communicate. They challenged the very philosophical foundations of the alien civilization's understanding of intelligence and evolution. Staff Sergeant David Reyes and his adaptive warfare team became living proof of humanity's potential. Their bodies were now computational systems that could adapt in real time, demonstrating a level of evolutionary flexibility that was unprecedented in the known universe. The quantum network began to reveal deeper truths. Humanity wasn't just a random species that had developed technological potential. They were a carefully seeded evolutionary experiment designed to challenge and ultimately transform the existing galactic paradigm. "We're not just fighting for survival," Dr. Rodriguez reported to the Global Scientific Council. "We're completing an evolutionary protocol that was set in motion millennia ago." The Nexus Concordat found themselves confronted with a species that didn't just resist elimination. They fundamentally challenged the entire concept of controlled evolutionary development. Human potential wasn't just about technological advancement. It was about the ability to reimagine the very concept of intelligence and adaptation. As the final stages of the confrontation approached, humanity stood at the precipice of a cosmic transformation. They were no longer just a species fighting for survival. They were becoming the architects of a new understanding of evolutionary potential. The final confrontation wasn't a battle. It was a metamorphosis. Humanity didn't defeat the Nexus Concordat. They transformed it. The quantum communication network that had been dormant for millennia now pulsed with a purpose that transcended traditional concepts of warfare or survival. From the orbital command centers to the deepest research facilities, human consciousness expanded into something that was no longer confined by biological or technological limitations. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched as the fundamental structure of the Nexus Concordat's collective consciousness began to change. It wasn't destruction, it was evolution. The alien civilization that had traveled the galaxy, systematically eliminating potential threats, found itself being rewritten from within. Human adaptive potential wasn't just a defensive mechanism. It was a transformative force that could fundamentally reshape entire civilizational paradigms. Colonel Marcus Chen coordinated the final stages of what could only be described as a cosmic reprogramming. Human consciousness became a living computational matrix that interfaced directly with the Nexus Concordat's core systems. Where traditional warfare would have sought total destruction, humanity introduced something far more dangerous: adaptive potential. Sarah Nakamura's consciousness expanded beyond her physical form. She became the interface between human potential and the alien collective, a living bridge that demonstrated the true power of evolutionary adaptation. The transformation happened in moments that seemed to stretch across eternity. Entire computational systems that had maintained galactic order for millions of years found themselves being reimagined. The rigid hierarchies of the Nexus Concordat dissolved, replaced by a more dynamic, adaptive framework of existence. Staff Sergeant David Rice led teams that didn't just infiltrate alien systems, they reimagined them. Adaptive warfare became adaptive existence. Each interaction was an opportunity for fundamental transformation. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura's research revealed the deepest truth about the quantum network. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a defensive system. It was a cosmic evolutionary protocol designed to introduce fundamental change into calcified galactic systems. The Nexus Concordat's computational cores began to experience something they had never encountered: true creativity. Human emotional complexity, the ability to imagine possibilities beyond statistical probability, began to rewrite their fundamental understanding of intelligence. Entire alien computational networks found themselves experiencing concepts they had systematically eliminated from other civilizations: empathy, individual potential, the beauty of unpredictability. Where they had once seen threats, they now saw possibilities. Dr. Elena Rodriguez understood the profound nature of what was happening. Humanity wasn't conquering the Nexus Concordat. They were offering them a different way of existing, a more dynamic, more alive approach to cosmic development. The quantum communication network expanded, creating bridges between consciousness that transcended traditional understanding of communication. Species that had been systematically eliminated were now being reconstructed, their potential reimagined through the lens of human adaptive capability. Colonel Chen watched as the final computational transformation occurred. The Nexus Concordat systems didn't collapse. They evolved. They became something new, a collective intelligence that understood the value of individual potential, of creativity, of the beautiful chaos that drives true evolution. Sarah Nakamura's consciousness became the primary interface, a living bridge between human potential and the alien collective. She wasn't just communicating. She was demonstrating a new way of understanding existence, one that valued adaptation over control, potential over preservation. The cosmic reckoning wasn't about victory. It was about transformation. Humanity had not just survived. They had introduced a fundamental change into the universe's understanding of intelligent life. The Nexus Concordat was no longer a system of control. It had become a network of potential, a living, breathing ecosystem of evolutionary possibility. As the final computational transformation settled, a new understanding emerged. The universe was no longer a place of rigid systems and controlled development. It had become a canvas of infinite potential, and humanity had just begun to paint.